July 1970. The Vietnam War is winding down. President Richard Nixon's Vietnamization program is in full effect. American troops are withdrawing. Ground operations are scaling back. The focus shifts to turning the war over to South Vietnamese forces. The era of large American offensives is over, yet in the mountains of the A Shau Valley, near the Laotian border, one firebase stands alone against overwhelming enemy forces. Firebase Ripcord, a hilltop outpost surrounded by North Vietnamese troops equipped with heavy artillery and sophisticated anti-aircraft weapons. For 23 days, the men of the 101st Airborne Division will endure constant bombardment, ground attacks, and isolation. The Siege of Ripcord will become one of the costliest battles of the war in terms of helicopter losses. Aircraft will be shot down daily. Crews will die trying to resupply and evacuate the firebase, and in the end, after holding through impossible conditions, the Americans will abandon Ripcord under fire, evacuating in a desperate operation that nearly becomes a massacre. This is the story of those 23 days, the last major firebase siege of the American war in Vietnam, and proof that even in retreat, the enemy could still inflict terrible casualties. The A Shau Valley, Valley of Death. The A Shau Valley runs north to south along the Laotian border in Thu Tin province, 45 kilometers long, 3 to 4 kilometers wide, surrounded by mountains rising over 1,000 meters. Triple canopy jungle covers the slopes. The valley floor is elephant grass and scattered trees. The A Shau has been an NVA stronghold since 1966. The Ho Chi Minh Trail runs through nearby Laos, making the valley a major infiltration corridor. Base camps, supply depots, anti-aircraft positions dot the mountains. Multiple NVA regiments operate in the area. The valley is their territory. The Americans have tried to control the A Shau for years. Operations Apache Snow and Massachusetts Striker in 1969, Delaware and Somerset Plain earlier. Each operation drove the NVA back temporarily. Each time, the NVA returned after American forces withdrew. The valley cannot be held permanently. The terrain favors defense. The proximity to Laos provides sanctuary. The NVA own the A Shau. By spring 1970, the 101st Airborne Division launches Operation Texas Star. The objective: disrupt NVA operations in the northern A Shau, prevent enemy forces from threatening Hue and the coastal lowlands. The operation involves establishing fire bases on key hilltops to provide artillery support for patrols and interdict enemy movement. March 12, 1970. Engineers and infantry from the 101st Airborne Air Assault onto a hilltop designated Hill 937. The designation refers to elevation in meters. The hill dominates the northern valley. From the summit, artillery can range deep into enemy territory. The engineers work under fire to clear the hilltop. Chainsaws cut trees. Explosives blast stumps. Graders level the summit. An artillery firebase takes shape. 6 105mm howitzers are airlifted in by Chinook helicopters. Bunkers are constructed. Wire is strung. The firebase is designated Ripcord. For 3 months, Ripcord functions as intended. Artillery fires missions supporting infantry operations in the valley. Helicopter resupply brings ammunition, food, water. The NVA harass the firebase with occasional mortar rounds but mount no serious attacks. Ripcord is one of several firebases in the operational area. Nothing special, just another hilltop outpost that changes in late June. June. The Noose tightens. By late June, intelligence reports indicate a major NVA build-up around Ripcord. The 324th NVA Regiment, the 29th Regiment, elements of the 8th by 03rd Regiment. Estimates suggest over 10,000 NVA troops are concentrating in the mountains surrounding the firebase. They bring heavy weapons, 130mm artillery, anti-aircraft guns, SA-7 heat-seeking missiles, the first time the Soviet supplied weapons appear in the A Shau. The NVA plan is deliberate: isolate Ripcord, interdict helicopter resupply, bombard the firebase with artillery, inflict casualties, force evacuation or destruction. They have time, they have patience, and they have learned from previous battles that American firebases are vulnerable when helicopter support is denied. July 1st, 1970. The siege begins. 0600 hours. NVA artillery opens fire. 130mm shells scream down from the mountains. They impact across Ripcord's small perimeter. The firebase is approximately 200 meters in diameter. Every shell lands inside the wire. There is no safe area. Bunkers take direct hits. Men scramble for cover. The Artillery Battery, Delta Battery, 2nd Battalion. 11th Artillery returns fire. The 6 105mm howitzers shoot counter-battery missions. Fire is directed at suspected enemy gun positions in the surrounding hills, but the NVA guns are well hidden, dug into caves, protected by overhead cover. American counter-battery fire is largely ineffective. The bombardment continues throughout the day, sporadic, random. The NVA shoot a few rounds, then cease fire. Hours pass, more rounds arrive. The randomness is psychologically devastating. No one knows when the next shells will come. Sleep is impossible. Stress is constant. July 2nd. The NVA escalate. Ground probes test Ripcord's defences. Small teams of sappers creep close to the wire at night. They throw satchel charges, fire RPGs. The defenders respond with rifle fire, machine guns, mortars. Flares illuminate the perimeter. The attacks are beaten back, but they signal NVA intentions. This is not harassment. This is preparation for something bigger. Helicopter. Resupply becomes dangerous. UH-1. Huey's flying ammunition and supplies to Ripcord receive ground fire. Heavy machine guns. 12.7mm anti-aircraft guns. The door gunners return fire, but the volume of incoming is intense. Pilots must make rapid approaches, land quickly, offload cargo and take off immediately. Time on ground is measured in seconds. July 3rd. The first helicopter is shot down. A Huey on final approach takes multiple hits. The engine fails. The pilot auto-rotates into the firebase perimeter. The aircraft crashes, but the crew survives. The helicopter is destroyed. Ripcord is now littered with wreckage that cannot be removed. The firebase garrison at this point consists of approximately 400 men. Delta Battery, 2nd Battalion, 11th Artillery with the 6 howitzers and supporting personnel. Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Infantry providing security. Elements of headquarters and support units. Against them, at least, 2 NVA regiments totaling 5,000 troops with heavy weapons and advantageous terrain. The odds are not good. July 4th to 10th. The pressure increases Independence Day, July 4th. The Americans celebrate with a cookout using sea rations. The NVA celebrate by intensifying the bombardment. Over 50 artillery rounds impact Ripcord during the day. Casualties mount. The aid station fills with wounded. Medevac helicopters fly through fire to extract critical casualties. One medevac bird is hit but makes it out. The crew is shaken but unhurt. The firebase perimeter is shrinking psychologically. The constant shelling forces everyone into bunkers. Movement above ground draws fire. Troops sprint between positions during lulls. The firebase becomes a collection of isolated bunkers connected by dangerous dashes across open ground. July 5th. A CH-47 Chinook helicopter carrying ammunition is hit on approach. The big twin rotorbird takes fire from multiple anti-aircraft positions. Rounds penetrate the fuel tanks. The aircraft explodes in mid-air. All aboard are killed. The wreckage crashes outside the perimeter. 4 crewmen dead. The firebase watches helplessly. Resupply becomes critical. Ammunition expenditure is high. The howitzers fire continuously. Machine guns burn through ammunition defending against probes. Water is rationed. Food is secondary to ammunition. Everything must be flown in by helicopter, and every helicopter flight is running a gauntlet. July 7th. Intelligence reports the NVA are moving 12.7mm anti-aircraft guns into positions ringing Ripcord. These heavy machine guns fire 50 caliber rounds that can shoot down helicopters at medium altitude. Combined with shoulder-fired missiles and small arms, the air defense is becoming impenetrable. The 101st Airborne Division commander, Major General John Hennessy, faces a decision. Reinforce Ripcord or withdraw. Reinforcement means committing more troops to a firebase under siege. Withdrawal means abandoning a position without being driven off. Neither option is appealing. He decides to hold. Ripcord will not be abandoned. July 8th. Another Chinook is hit carrying a sling load of ammunition. The aircraft takes fire, the cargo explodes beneath it. The blast damages the helicopter. The pilots fight for control and barely make it back to base. No resupply delivered. The ammunition situation at Ripcord becomes critical. July 9th. Ground attacks intensify. NVA sappers penetrate the wire at night. They get inside the perimeter before being detected. Fighting erupts in the dark. Grenades. Close-range rifle fire. The defenders kill the sappers, but take casualties. 3 Americans dead, 7 wounded. The NVA are testing defences for weak points. July 10th. The howitzer battery is running low on ammunition. Each gun has perhaps 100 rounds remaining. Normal expenditure is 200 rounds per gun per day. At current rate, the battery will be out of ammunition in 12 hours. Without artillery support, the firebase cannot defend itself. Emergency resupply is essential. A CH-54 Tahi heavy lift helicopter, called Sky Crane, attempts to deliver a sling load of ammunition. The ungainly helicopter with its exposed cockpit and thin skin is vulnerable. It approaches Ripcord carrying 4,000 kilograms of artillery shells. Anti-aircraft fire erupts. Tracers converge on the slow-moving target. The pilots press on. The aircraft is hit. Multiple rounds penetrate the cockpit. The co-pilot is killed instantly. The pilot is wounded. He releases the sling load early to gain altitude and speed. The ammunition crashes down outside the perimeter, unusable. The damaged Sky Crane limps away. The pilot makes an emergency landing. He survives. Ripcord is running out of ammunition, out of time, and the NVA are closing in. July 11th to 18th. The siege tightens. July 11th. Division. Headquarters authorizes emergency supply drops. C-130 cargo aircraft will make low-altitude passes and push pallets of ammunition and supplies out the rear cargo door. The pallets parachute down. It is dangerous and inaccurate, but helicopters cannot get through. The C-130 makes its run at 300 meters altitude. Anti-aircraft fire fills the sky. The big transport is hit multiple times but keeps flying. Pallets tumble out. Parachutes deploy. Some land inside the perimeter, some land outside. Troops sprint out to recover what they can under fire. One soldier is killed retrieving ammunition. July 13th. The NVA launch a major attack on a hilltop position near Ripcord. Outpost Hotel, a company-sized position 1 kilometer north of the main firebase. Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Infantry defends Hotel. They are hit by a battalion-sized assault. The fighting is intense. NVA troops storm the perimeter in waves. They breach the wire, hand combat erupts. The defenders call for artillery from Ripcord. The howitzers fire danger close. Shells explode within 50 meters of American positions. The barrage stops the attack, but the defenders take casualties. Hotel holds, but barely. July 14th. A relief force attempts to reach Hotel Overland. Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Infantry moves through the jungle toward Hotel's position. They are ambushed en route. Heavy fire from prepared positions. The company takes casualties and is pinned down. They cannot advance. They cannot reach Hotel. Hotel is now isolated like Ripcord. 2 American positions surrounded by NVA forces. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Division headquarters begins planning evacuation of outlying positions to consolidate forces at Ripcord. But Ripcord itself is barely holding. July 15th. Another helicopter is lost. A Huey carrying wounded from Hotel to the rear is hit by anti-aircraft fire. The aircraft crashes in the valley. All aboard are killed. 6 Americans dead. The helicopter losses are becoming catastrophic. The 101st Airborne has lost more aircraft around Ripcord in 2 weeks than in months of operations elsewhere. The aircrews keep flying. They know the odds. They know friends have died. But the troops at Ripcord depend on them. If helicopters stop flying, the firebase falls. The crews accept the risk. They volunteer for missions others decline. Their courage is extraordinary. Many will not survive. July 16th. Hotel is evacuated under fire. The decision is made to withdraw the company before it is overrun. Chinooks brave intense fire to land at Hotel. Troops run to the helicopters. Some aircraft are hit. One Chinook takes over 30 hits but keeps flying. The evacuation succeeds. Hotel is abandoned. The hilltop is given to the NVA. Now Ripcord stands alone, the only American position in the northern A Shau, completely surrounded under constant bombardment. Running low on supplies, the question is no longer if Ripcord will be evacuated, but when and how. July 17th, an O-6 observation helicopter, a small scout bird, is shot down near Ripcord. The pilot is killed. The observer survives the crash but is captured by NVA forces. He becomes the first American prisoner taken in the immediate area. His fate is unknown. July 18th. The NVA bring up more artillery. Now 3 or 4 batteries are firing on Ripcord. The bombardment is continuous, over 100 rounds per day. The firebase is being systematically destroyed. Bunkers collapse. Communications equipment is damaged. The aid station takes a direct hit. Medical supplies are destroyed. Wounded lie in open trenches receiving minimal care. The perimeter is a moonscape. Craters overlap. Trees are shattered stumps. Equipment is scattered everywhere. Damaged helicopters, destroyed vehicles, shell casings. The firebase looks like pictures of World War I battlefields, and thus Americans have been here less than 3 weeks. July 19th to 22. The decision to evacuate July 19th. Major General Hennessy makes the decision. Ripcord will be evacuated. The firebase cannot be held. The casualties are unsustainable. The helicopter losses are unacceptable. The strategic value does not justify the cost. Ripcord will be abandoned. The evacuation is planned for July 23rd. 4 days to prepare. The operation, codenamed New York Peak, will extract all personnel, weapons, and as much equipment as possible. The howitzers will be sling-loaded out by Chinooks. Troops will be lifted by Hueys. The firebase will then be destroyed by B-52 strikes to prevent the NVA from using the position. But first, the defences must hold for 4 more days, and the NVA show no signs of reducing pressure. If anything, the attacks intensify as if the enemy senses American intentions. July 20th. A Chinook carrying a new howitzer barrel to replace a worn-out gun is shot down on approach. The helicopter crashes on the firebase perimeter. The crew survives, but the aircraft is destroyed. Another helicopter loss. The firebase is now littered with wreckage. 5 destroyed helicopters on or near Ripcord. The graveyard grows. Inside the firebase, morale is complex. The troops are exhausted. They have been under fire for 3 weeks. Sleep deprivation affects everyone. Some men show signs of combat fatigue. 1,000-yard stare, shaking hands, but they continue fighting. The sergeants and lieutenants hold units together through personal leadership and the bonds between soldiers. July 21st. The NVA launch probes testing the wire. They know something is happening. American activity has increased. Helicopters are flying more missions. The defenders are alert but preparing. The NVA sense opportunity. If they can overrun Ripcord before evacuation, it becomes a propaganda victory. Dien Bien Phu in miniature. They push harder. Night of July 21st to 22nd. Heavy ground attacks. NVA infantry assaults from 2 directions. They breach the wire in one sector. Sappers penetrate the perimeter. Grenades explode across the firebase. Tracer fire arcs through darkness. Illumination rounds light the night. The fighting is desperate. The defenders hold by meters. Machine guns fire until barrels glow red. Riflemen shoot at muzzle flashes. The artillery battery fires beehive rounds. Canister shot. Thousands of small metal darts that turn howitzers into giant shotguns. The darts shred attackers at close range. Bodies pile up outside the bunkers. By dawn, the attack is repulsed. But the cost is high. 12 Americans killed, 28 wounded. The MVA lose over 50 dead left in the wire. More were dragged away. The firebase has survived, but barely. One more major attack and the perimeter might collapse. There is no time left. Evacuation must happen now. July 23rd, tomorrow, whether ready or not. July 23, Operation New York Peak, 0600 hours, July 23rd, 1970. The evacuation begins. The plan calls for extracting all personnel and the 6 howitzers in phases throughout the day. Chinooks will lift the guns, Hueys will evacuate troops. The operation must be completed by nightfall. If darkness arrives with Americans still on Ripcord, they will be overrun. Phase 1. Artillery evacuation. CH-47 Chinooks approach Ripcord carrying sling equipment. They must land, crews must attach cables to the howitzers, and the helicopters must lift the massive guns and fly out. Each howitzer weighs over 2,000 kilograms. The Chinooks are vulnerable on the ground. 0630. The first Chinook lands. Ground crews sprint to hook up the first howitzer. Anti-aircraft fire erupts. Tracers walk toward the helicopter. The crew works frantically. 30 seconds. 1 minute. The gun is hooked. The Chinook lifts with the howitzer dangling beneath. Rounds impact the aircraft. The pilot fights for altitude. The helicopter makes it out. 1 gun saved. The process repeats. Each extraction is a race against ground fire. The second Chinook is hit on approach. Smoke pours from an engine. The pilot aborts. The damaged aircraft limps back to base. 1 engine destroyed. The crew survives. A replacement Chinook arrives. The second gun is hooked and lifted out successfully. Then the third, 3 howitzers evacuated, 3 remain, 900 hours. The fourth howitzer is being prepared when NVA artillery finds the landing zone. Shells impact near the waiting Chinook. The helicopter lifts off without the gun to avoid destruction. The crew will return. They must. Those howitzers cannot be left for the NVA. 15 minutes later, the Chinook returns. Under heavy fire, the crew lands again. The gun is hooked. As the helicopter lifts off, a mortar round explodes near the landing zone. Shrapnel peppers the aircraft. The Chinook shudders but keeps climbing. The gun swings wildly beneath. The pilot maintains control. They make it out. 4 guns saved, 1100 hours. The 5th howitzer is extracted despite intense fire. 5 guns saved, 1 remains. Phase 2 begins, troop evacuation. Hueys land in rapid succession. Each helicopter carries 8 to 10 men, with 400 troops to evacuate. This requires over 40 flights. Each flight runs through a gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire. The troops board in order, the wounded first, then support personnel, finally the infantry who have been defending the perimeter. The defensive line contracts as men are lifted out. The remaining troops must defend larger sectors with fewer people. 1200 hours. A Huey is hit on takeoff. The helicopter crashes back onto the firebase. Passengers scramble out. The crew is injured but survives. The destroyed helicopter blocks part of the landing zone. Operations continue around the wreckage. 1300 hours. Halfway through the troop evacuation. 200 men remain. The NVA recognize what is happening. They increase fire. Artillery shells rain down. The firebase is hell. Explosions, smoke, traces. The evacuation continues. 1400 hours. Another Huey is hit. The aircraft crashes outside the perimeter. The crew and passengers are killed. 10 more Americans dead. The evacuation is becoming a disaster, but stopping means everyone dies. The helicopters keep coming. 1500 hours. 100 men remain, including the last artillery crew with the 6th howitzer. The firebase perimeter is collapsing inward. The defenders hold only the immediate landing zone and the gun position. 1600 hours. The final Chinook approaches for the last howitzer. This is the most dangerous moment. The NVA know this is the last gun. Every weapon targets the landing zone. The Chinook lands in a storm of fire. Rounds impact everywhere. The noise is deafening. The artillery crew hooks the howitzer with speed born of desperation. 45 seconds. The gun is hooked. The Chinook lifts. Tracers chase the aircraft as it climbs. The helicopter takes multiple hits. One engine begins smoking. The pilot keeps going. Altitude. Distance. The gun swings beneath. They make it out. All 6 howitzers saved, 1630 hours, only the last infantry. Platoon remains. 40 men. They defend the landing zone for the final extractions. The NVA are closing in. Mortar rounds impact continuously. Small arms fire comes from multiple directions. The platoon is nearly surrounded. The last Hueys land. The infantry boards rapidly. Some men literally run to helicopters already lifting off and climb aboard in flight. The door gunners fire M60s until the barrels smoke. 1700 hours. The last helicopter lifts off. On board, the final 20 men from Ripcord. They look down at the firebase they defended for 23 days. It is a ruin. Craters, wreckage, bodies. But they held. They did not break. They were not overrun. The helicopter flies east towards safety. NVA troops swarm onto the abandoned firebase within minutes. They raise their flag. They claim victory. But the Americans evacuated everyone. The howitzers were saved. No one was left behind to be captured. By that measure, the evacuation succeeded. That night, B-52 bombers deliver arc-light strikes on Ripcord. 3 plane cells drop over 200 tons of bombs. The firebase is obliterated. Nothing remains but craters. The NVA can have the hill. It is worthless now. The cost. The siege of Firebase Ripcord lasted 23 days, July 1st to 23rd, 1970. The final accounting, US casualties, 75 killed, 383 wounded. Over 450 casualties from a garrison that never exceeded 400 men. Some personnel were killed or wounded multiple times after returning from medical treatment. The casualty rate approaches 100%. Helicopter losses, approximately 16 helicopters destroyed, over 60 aircraft damaged, UH-1 Hueys, CH-47 Chinooks, 06 Scouts, CH-54 Sky cranes, the costliest aviation losses at any single firebase during the entire war. NVA casualties, unknown. Estimates range from several hundred to over 1,000 killed. The NVA controlled the battlefield and removed their dead. Accurate count is impossible, but their losses were significant. The strategic impact of holding Ripcord is debatable. American commanders claimed the firebase disrupted NVA operations and prevented attacks on coastal areas. Critics argued Ripcord was a costly outpost that achieved little and should have been evacuated earlier. Both perspectives have merit. What is certain, the men who defended Ripcord showed extraordinary courage. They held under conditions that would break most units. They endured constant bombardment, isolation, and the knowledge that every supply helicopter might be shot down. They fought knowing they were defending a position that would eventually be abandoned. The helicopter crews who flew support missions demonstrated courage beyond measure. They flew through fire daily. They watched friends shot down. They knew the odds of survival decreased with every mission, yet they kept flying because soldiers on the ground depended on them. Their sacrifice was absolute. The aftermath Firebase Ripcord was the last major firebase siege of the American war in Vietnam. After July 1970, US forces avoided establishing isolated hilltop positions. The lesson was clear: firebases in enemy-controlled terrain are vulnerable when resupply is contested. The cost of holding them exceeds the value. The siege occurred during the drawdown. American troop levels were declining. Ground operations were being turned over to ARVN. The war was supposedly winding down. Yet Ripcord proved the enemy remained dangerous. The NVA could still mass forces, employ sophisticated weapons, and inflict severe casualties. For the 101st Airborne Division, Ripcord was a painful chapter. The Screaming Eagles had fought across Vietnam since 1965, Ia Drang, Hamburger Hill, countless other battles. Ripcord added to the legacy, but at terrible cost. The division continued operations in the A Shau, but never again established permanent fire bases in that valley. The survivors of Ripcord scattered to other units as tours ended and the division drew down. They carried memories of 23 days under siege, the constant fear, the exhaustion, the friends lost. Some struggled with those memories for decades: post-traumatic stress, survivor guilt, the weight of experience that civilians cannot understand. Veterans of Ripcord formed associations to maintain contact and honour the fallen. They gathered at reunions to share stories and preserve the history. They ensured that the sacrifice was not forgotten, even as the war faded from public consciousness. The lessons Ripcord reinforced lessons learned repeatedly in Vietnam. Holding terrain for its own sake is futile. Isolated positions cannot be sustained against determined enemy with sophisticated weapons. Helicopters are vulnerable to concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Courage and firepower cannot compensate for poor strategic positioning. The siege also demonstrated that even late in the war, even during drawdown, combat remained deadly. The conflict did not gradually wind down with reduced intensity. It continued at full violence until the Americans left. The enemy adapted and improved. They acquired better weapons. They learned American tactics. They became more dangerous over time, not less. For military planners, Ripcord highlighted the risks of firebase strategy. The concept of establishing artillery bases on hilltops worked when helicopter resupply was secure. When the enemy could contest the airspace, firebases became traps. The doctrine evolved too slowly. Ripcord paid the price for that slowness. The forgotten battle. Unlike Khe Sanh or Hamburger Hill, Firebase Ripcord never captured public attention. The siege occurred during the drawdown when American focus was shifting away from Vietnam. The media covered it minimally. The public barely noticed. The battle was overshadowed by larger events, and the general desire to forget the war. Yet for those who were there, Ripcord was as significant as any other siege. The danger was as great, the courage as profound, the sacrifice as real. The lack of recognition does not diminish what happened. It only means the story must be told by those who remember. July 1st to 23rd, 1970. 23 days on a hilltop in the A Shau Valley. 400 men held against thousands. They endured artillery fire, ground attacks, and isolation. They were supplied by helicopter crews who flew through hell daily. In the end, they evacuated under fire, saving themselves and their weapons. They were not defeated. They were not overrun. They held until ordered to withdraw. That is the story of Firebase Ripcord, not the best-known siege of the Vietnam War, not the longest or bloodiest, but one of the most costly in proportion to forces engaged, and one of the most desperate evacuations under fire. The hill is empty now, is reclaimed by jungle, indistinguishable from surrounding mountains. But for 75 American families, the names of their loved ones remain carved on the wall in Washington. For 383 wounded, the scars remain. And for the survivors, the memory remains of 23 days when they held a hilltop because they were ordered to, knowing it would eventually be abandoned, yet fighting anyway because that is what soldiers do. That is the legacy of Firebase Ripcord. Courage in the face of futility, sacrifice in service of strategy that would not succeed. And the enduring question, was holding that hill worth the cost? The answer depends on who you ask and how you measure the value of human courage against strategic objective. The debate continues, the hill remains silent, and the fallen rest.